wouldn't it be?
Obsessed with the Creature of the Black Lagoon when I was younger.
Man, the creature's going to creature, man. You're going to the creature's lair. He's going to mess you up.
They never did a new one of that whole thing.
And I'm kind of relieved based on what they've done with the other ones. Hold on a second. And we are live. So, welcome to episode 109 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got Spyder Dobrofsky.
Nice to pronounce.
And yeah, man. Thank you for coming on. Spyder is an executive producer and screenwriter, and he is rightfully celebrating the success of his film, Teardrop, that has been released on Tubi as a Tubi Original Film. I've seen the film, and we're here to talk about that tonight and to hear some more from Spyder. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you, Mike.
On the release of your movie. I'm sure that must be, like the greatest feeling. I used to be an English teacher, so I know, I know a little bit about writing, but that must be just like the most awesome feeling. I couldn't be happier for you, man.
Thank you, my friend.
It's very cool.
It's been a surreal week, I'll tell you that,
Yeah, I believe you.
Especially because I actually had the first draft of the script in 2016, so it's been a long journey getting here, 6 years, I guess.
Well, there's something to be said for that, and that kind of perseverance.
Yeah.
To stick with it. Before we went on, we were talking about podcasting a little bit, and I was telling somebody last week that I looked it up when I first started this. The average podcast lasts for 174 days, they said, and then most people just give up.
So they found that was the time that just was basically the podcast didn't go any long because they just weren't growing as their expectations.
Maybe they weren't growing. Maybe they just lost confidence. Maybe they weren't so sure of them. Any number of reasons. The rationale was never specifically explained, but it was said that 174 days, about 6 months, tends to be the cutoff date. For sink or swim. So 6 months is one thing, man, but you're talking 6 years and, sticking with it. And, that's saying something, that sticking with it really.
It's everything.
It counts. Yeah.
I mean, anyone who asks me about being a writer, I always tell them and by the way, I didn't just have it there and just sit and hope and wait. I wrote maybe 17 scripts since then, so, and that's what I tell people to do. It's just keep moving forward, even it's interesting you talking about the podcast moment where people give up. It's because, they probably, a lot of people have expectations about at least by this point, my podcast should be this big, or this is my third script. Should be the one that sells. And then it doesn't happen. And then that's usually where people the inspiration goes away and all that, instead of keeping it going, focus on the content, the creation part. And then turns out it's podcast number 300. That was the one that went viral, at least for me. And that was almost my story too, was just keep writing, keep telling stories. And then all of a sudden you meet this producer and they're I'm looking for a horror Western. And I'm whoa, I have that. And this was in September. They bought the script in September and now it's, May, and the movie's released. And I mean, it's been a while, whatever, 6 months, but a lot of hard work before then, and a very interesting process to, go into the horror space as well.
It sounds like a lot of the game is mental, to stick with it, because to say, hey, this is my third screenplay, I should have done something by now. It's not an irrational argument.
No, it's not. It's actually a pretty healthy, the problem is having doubt is kind of a normal process. The problem is you have to override that and keep going, where it's okay, things aren't working out the way my mind thought it was going to be. And when you erase everything outside of yourself and you're do I love what I do? Do I love writing? Do I love, doing podcasts? Yeah, I actually do. And then that fuel keeps you going. And then usually the output, the larger output allows you to get better you know, you go back, you tweak everything, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, thank God I stuck with it. You know what I mean? Versus,
Yeah, man.
yeah, I feel like I've had 100 different times where I was like, oh man, like, you know, maybe it's like, oh my gosh, how many more spec scripts can one person possibly write? Like, how many more hours at Starbucks can I log in? And then it's like, well, I guess I'm doing it again, you know, and that's just what. It's just the lifestyle, you know.
I think maybe that's what separates the wheat from the chaff, sort of. You know, that maybe that sort of obsessive kind of trait. You know, it's you got to keep pushing, and you got to keep, you know, making the content, and you got to keep producing. You know,
you have to, and sometimes for writers especially, you know, I also would make short films and direct, and I think even though those short films didn't get seen like any of the scripts that I sold, the creating of turning your you know, your words into film, and even if it was shot poorly or the actor was bad or whatever, there's some sort of joy and catharsis in actually doing it. And so it almost reminds you that what you're doing is real, and because when you write scripts, especially not with novels but scripts, you're basically writing a blueprint for a movie. And when it doesn't sell or doesn't get read, it's kind of like a document that nobody wants, like it, without it being turned into a movie. It's kind of a rather pointless thing, a screenplay, versus like a novel exists in finished form. Like you could put your novel online and people would read it, but you could never put your script online, you know?
Yeah, it's the format.
Yeah, it's a weird format. It's a format designed for, you know, actors, directors, producers.
For a visual medium.
Yeah, to actually take it and build. It's like, it would be like, you know, like an architecture, you know, like having the blueprint for the house. It's like, all right, I want to see the house. Like, I don't really want to look at your blueprint for how you're going to build this house. And I think that screenplays are effectively that, even though there's writing and style and prose and flow, it's kind of a weird unfinished thing that you can constantly change and go back. And so there's also this unsatisfaction I think a lot of writers have from just stacking them up and feeling like they're in a vacuum.
You start to build up this back catalog, you know, and you want somebody to look at, you know, I've got all the stuff back here, you know, somebody take a look at this, you know, this kind of thing. But I agree with you 100% about directing or something like that. It keeps it fresh in your mind.
Yeah, it keeps it real, and what you're actually doing, which is you're writing stories to be seen in the movies. And so even if you're doing it just for the short form, it's like, oh wow, like here's my words come out of an actor's mouth and lighting and like in the scenario, and then like that really works or that doesn't work. And I think that those seeing it is just A, it's an incredible experience, and B, it makes you better, and the better you get, you know, the more likely you are going to be to find success in whatever genre or whatever style. And I just, you know, I try to tell people to just stay in the game as long as possible. And if you're unhappy, if you're angry, if you're bitter, if you're blah, 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 said they're going to read my script and it's been 6 months, it's like, you're not going to survive 10 years of thinking that way, you know? You're just not.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. And yet, you know, no, but I mean, you know, people just keep plugging at it, you know?
Yeah.
They keep plugging at it, and, you know, you find new ways of, you know, keeping your mentality, you know, or keeping your mindset, you know, stable, and, you know, you end up getting there. Hold on a second. We got a couple of comments.
Sure.
We got Eric from Hey Internet Eric here. He says, welcome to the podcast. Dude. Eric's one of our regular guests on the show. He's a big friend of the show from the get-go, and he says, congratulations on the film.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it, man.
And he said he just added Teardrop to his queue on Tubi. And he'll be watching it very soon. So good deal. And you've got Matt R. He was saying, hey, he's a friend of yours, I guess. So,
what up, dude?
Very cool. Very cool.
Cool. I like this format. This is cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool browser-based software. It's simple.
That's it's easy. Really sick. I like how these came up, and I like the nice avatars too. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody sets those up for their YouTube channels.
Oh, it's the one on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, this is streaming through YouTube. This is streaming right now on YouTube. It's streaming on Twitch. It's streaming on Twitter. And then tomorrow, what I'll end up doing, I'll send you a copy of the video file. But I'll upload a separate thing that will upload audio only on the Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google. So this will branch out everywhere.
I love
Listen
that.
Listen We're about 10 minutes in. Let me hit the intro real quick, and then we'll get down to brass tacks. So one of the things that I was really appreciative of, I mean, aside from the fact that you came on the show, which I'm very grateful for, was the fact that this is a sign that indie filmmaking or smaller budget filmmaking is alive and well. We were talking about a little bit before we got on the show that, everything's sort of been taken over by, blockbusters.
Yeah.
And things like that. So it's out there, but you got to look a little harder.
Sure.
For this kind of stuff, and thank goodness for channels like Tubi.
Yeah,
I love Tubi. I use it constantly.
That's so great here. Yeah. It's happening. I know it's happening. Of course, the hard thing was that in the last 10 years or so that was middle length movies, those mid budgets, those even those 5 to 10 million movies, which used to go to theaters, don't, because they weren't making ludicrous amounts of money, and then they got kind of lost onto the space of streamers and Apple TV and stuff because there's just so much content. And so I think we're kind of finding our way of low budget has to hit some of these parameters. It has to have a production value that's good enough. It's also got to be exciting and high concept. I think initially a lot of low budget films would not take the route of having an interesting movie premise, that was like fun and exciting and big, and then finding a creative way to do that, And so I think, at least for me, I've been seeing a lot of movies, in the Teardrop range that I felt are actually movies that I'd watch and I have been watching, which I think it's been like kind of a bit of a cold winter of not a lot of those films. And now we're seeing, maybe since the pandemic, a bit of a rise in indie filmmaking again, and not indie filmmaking in what I think the dry drama style, but I want to watch movies with supernatural entities and sci-fi things and aliens and I just want to watch stuff that's about larger things instead of just realistic dramas. For me personally, that's not what I like to watch, and that often takes the indie space because it's just characters and a lot of talking heads. But I want to see it's a little bit of spectacle and a mystery, that's for me personally.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I enjoy the other kind too. Maybe I've just reached that age, where I'm okay with things moving a little less, frantically. But I also enjoy. Well, no, but I mean, I run a horror podcast.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
So I run a sci-fi podcast. I run an action thriller kind of thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's difficult about it is that it feels, in terms of streaming service, you feel oversaturated a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just so much to have to pick. You don't know what necessarily to select from. I'm sort of operating on instinct or word of mouth, or I try to listen to smart people, whose opinion I respect.
Yeah,
okay, you like this, and so I'll give it a shot from here. But, in terms of going to the cinema, I've practically given up.
I must admit, I'm a diehard cinema lover. I have given up a little bit too, just from my last few experiences, not really being as what I wanted out of it. I feel that I grew up watching blockbusters and loving it. I mean, one of the first movies I watched in theaters for the blockbuster era was The Mummy, the original Mummy, and granted, you look back and the CG doesn't hold up very well, but you open on a movie and the guy's about to get hung, and it was this it had this really kind of grittier edge for that kids could watch, but thing, and I feel as though a lot of movies that I've gone to theaters are missing the stakes. I just don't care that much about, and then people are just saying they're body counts, it's a disaster comes through and kills 100,000 people, and you don't feel anything, and it's kind of a weird spectacle without humanity. But I do think that we're making a shift. I think movies are getting better, and tastemakers are getting better, and just the people on top and creators and filmmakers are getting more innovative. Again, it's hard to tell with writers because a lot of writers' scripts, I don't want to comment on the fact because you don't know if their script was changed and gutted. So, or maybe they just weren't a good writer, but you know what I mean? You never know. You never know if that was the initial script the writer wrote, or if that was the product of a giant studio saying, we need this, we need that. And then you have like a Frankenstein monster kind of story where like the first act doesn't make any sense with the second act. And then there's a plot twist and you're like, that character was barely in it. You've seen one of those movies.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I enjoy Brendan Fraser's Mummy. I think that movie still holds up today.
I brought it up because it was just one of those movies, and like the original Pirates, and like we're one of those movies, and granted I was like 12 or 11 or something, but like I remember Brendan Fraser's Mummy of just like his character and Rachel Weisz's character. I rooted for them, and it was as simple as that, and the Mummy stuff was cool and mythological, and I really think fondly back on that era of studio movies.
That's a premise that I think that's a product of good story writing.
Yeah, that's what I would give it. I'd like to know who the writer was.
That's good story writing, and I think what's happened nowadays, and you probably know more about it, and I don't want to take up all your time talking about this, but I think it's just become over reliant on CGI. Yeah, it's the spectacle has become everything, and there's nothing wrong with spectacle per se, but it can't be the entirety.
Yeah, it just
it sort of has. So when I see a movie like yours or something, then I'm more than happy to tune in and to check it out. And that's what I did, and it was definitely worth. I'm telling everybody right now, go to Tubi, check this movie Teardrop. It's worthwhile. It's a good story. It's got some retro vibe to it that I really liked. It saw some things that I'm like, I haven't seen that in movies in a real long time. It takes some risks.
It's risks. We took risks, and that's I have to give credit to everyone. The director Stephen R. Monroe and Tubi as well, and the producers and this producer Ira Pincus and the whole cast were like. The script always had those risks, and they're not risks in like, oh my God, it's crazy, but just like, hey, look, like this is going to trust a little bit more from the audience. They're going to have to go like pay attention a little bit more. Like if they're like making a TikTok video, I have nothing against TikTok, but they're making a TikTok video while they're watching, like it's probably not going to be their favorite movie, because it's like you're missing out on this mystery unfolding and these pieces. And also just having where it's like, hey, look, spectacle, like you said, very important, but it has to be earned. We have to care about the characters enough to go through whatever that spectacle might be. Otherwise, it's just, scares and this and action and
it's safe.
Yeah. And so, I've always been a big fan of the mystery genre, and not, mystery in like the, Scooby-Doo way, but like in the, like, let's slowly unfold what's even happening in this town of Teardrop and like what's going on, and have red herrings that aren't like, oh, this is a red herring that's like here and has no point, but rather this town, you think it's going to be about this, and then you think it's going to be about this, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's about this. And really trusting like foreshadowing and atmosphere and like suspense through like the slow burn versus like just be scared and jump scare every 5 seconds. And again, in an era where people want that fast paced thing, I don't think audiences do, but I think a lot of companies are afraid of losing audience interest, but people need to care.
Yeah, I think 12-year-olds do, and I think sometimes that's who people are marketing to nowadays. People who constantly need that dopamine hit like every 30 seconds. And I'm like, fuck, man, give me a break. Slow it down. A little less is more sometimes.
I mean, I remember when I was 12, like I was like in awe by Usual Suspects and like in like movies like that and like Sixth Sense and the others, where I'm like, it was a slow unwinding mystery. And I'm like, I feel as though everyone prefers that movie, but when they're not seeing it, they're like, all right, well, what's the best version of the, kind of hyper, like candy version of your thing? And then it's like, well, it better have this movie star, it better have this much thing, and those kind of elements. And then people are looking for a different experience, and it's like, put it on my TV, I'll do it. It's like, I want a background movie on right now while I'm doing this work. Like, it's good,
Yeah, and it's become about maximizing output.
Yeah,
it's got nothing. It has little to do with anything else. But hold on, we got some more comments. John K. Alvarez is in the house. He says, "Hey, Spyder, welcome to the podcast. The information you're sharing should be a masterclass, or at least a TED Talk." John Steele, he said, I was just going to watch Teardrop on there the other night. I'm sure John, thanks for stopping by, man. I'm sure he'll stop by and catch it.
John's all buffed up, man.
Any inspiration for the film? What was your inspiration for? Was it just ghost towns?
Well, I've always been obsessed with hauntings and just, The Shining is one of my favorite films, and just, I don't know, something about ghosts in general, like more into the folklore and mythology of it. I really like the idea of a movie that tied in a little bit of history into the haunting, but then didn't become overly reliant on like, this is a true story, because a lot of true stories, quite frankly, just aren't that interesting, where I wish they bridged away into something else.
Yeah.
So my idea was this like ghost novelist guy going to this place and like bringing these students, and the place itself is haunted, but really, why is he here, and what's going on in his head as kind of a great mystery. I pictured this Chris character of this guy just kind of showing up at this town and like getting kind of lost and obsessed, and that kind of blending in with the haunting of like,
it's definitely got, I think it's definitely got like a low key kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated that. I did see elements of The Shining, but what it really reminded me of, I don't know if you remember the show, HBO show Carnival.
Yes.
And so there was that episode Babylon, where they went into the ghost. They went into the ghost. Go ahead.
That was Clancy Brown, right? Was that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's Clancy Brown's my favorite role from Clancy Brown.
Dude, he was great in Dexter too, by the way, this new season of Dexter. He was unbelievable, but continue.
Okay, I'm going to have to catch that, but that's who also that's what introduced me to Nick Stahl.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big Nick Stahl fan. I mean, I know that he's had a rough couple of years, on the fence, so to speak. But this movie reminded me of that. It had that grainy kind of feel from the Carnival, and that sort of episode, that dusty kind of thing. Maybe it was just even dirt roads, and things like that, but.
There's just something weird about, like the idea of just how would this other plane work if it was real, this, ghosts and really treating, at least for me, like treating the haunting stuff seriously, and making a guy who cares about it and is like kind of, looking to debunk a place. I like the idea of that, of a guy who's got some smart and some wits and some balls too, where he's like not really going to spook very easily, and he's like on a mission there. And I just think that that's kind of a fun, face off kind of thing. And I just, the guy they cast, Jeff Branson, just crushed. I was so happy with how he, played it, and he's just got
a good feeling. I'm sure that's a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, that was my thing where I was like, please let the guy that I get for this Chris guy work, because it's like kind of a role that I knew was kind of needed a guy who understood the like obsession thing and was just had this, more of a movie star quality about him, because the role itself, the guy is kind of an asshole, the character, and I knew that if it didn't have like this movie star charisma kind of guy and look, that you would just hate the guy instead of being like, all right, this guy's kind of like a bad boy novelist guy. You'd be like, this guy's annoying, or this guy's a jerk. It's like, oh, he's just one of those guys who can rock a leather jacket and is kind of cool and this, and is a little bit got something off about him, but it's interesting versus like, something where it bothers you as an audience member. And so I thought the cast and the director and the team and the cartel, they just like put together the script with the right people. I've never had a project that I felt was like so perfectly cast.
One of the things that we come up that's a recurring topic on the show, especially when it comes to the horror movies, is that a lot of the characters appear damaged.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sense of that a bit. I mean, it's under the surface with him.
Yeah.
It's under the surface, but something's going on there that's a little off. You usually don't cast, healthy characters, and then throw them into, like the horror meat grinder. You have people that are a little, they're a little off kilter from the get go. Hold on a second. We got some more comments.
That's the fun too,
Tubi is an amazing streaming channel. Now that they're doing original content, it'll help new screenwriters and directors get their films out. CGI can be great, but nothing beats practical effects or having actors really there on the set. You get more out of the cast. John says, if the core storytelling is weak, no amount of spectacle will make it worth watching.
Double thumbs up.
Eric said, just watch the trailer for Teardrop. Looks damn good. So, Eric, if these guys are saying they're going to watch it, these are hardcore horror fans, so they're going to be watching the movie.
And have you seen the film
Ghost Town?
Ghost Town film from what, 1988? Is that
88? Yeah.
No, I haven't. I gotta see it.
Okay. Hold on. We got one direct question. A. Noel. The film was amazing. How many rewrites did you go through before you felt like your script was ready for production? And that's from A. Noel from Twitter.
A. Noel. Hi, from Twitter. Thank you so much. The script that sold was not, I don't think I did any rewrites. I think I nailed it on the first go ahead, but we did production notes, which when you one day, get your movie going, you'll very quickly realize that this scene that you love, we still have to do it, but we have to figure out how to do it based on this location we got or this actor we got. And so, there was notes that way. There was, great ideas that came from the filmmaker. But really, the script stayed pretty similar. Everyone was pretty jazzed up on the story. And, the only real things we did was just to kind of, make things make sense in the town that we were shooting the movie in. And, just like if you had for example, for someone who wanted to understand this, like we had the hotel we wanted to shoot at, right? But like say the way I wrote it was like there was a double winding staircase in the thing, right? It's like, okay, well, we have this hotel. So,
yeah, we're not going to build you a hotel.
Yeah, it's like, we're going to build you a staircase, Spyder. It's like, no. So, and a good production will say, hey, look, how can we accomplish what you got here, but without having 300 extras? And then it's like, okay, well, what I was really trying to do, and I actually think for writers that if you take it as they're trying to enhance the movie by bringing it to life and using a great location, and the cast and director who have their resources and their vision, what you're really doing by making your changes, you're not losing what was there before. You're actually enhancing the idea and finding the core of those scene ideas where it's like, wow, strip down the scene. It's really about this, so it should actually be done this way. So I actually had probably the greatest time with the rewrites because it was just like making the story better and better and better.
Now, is that a common thing? Because you're making it sound like you were very lucky. Like you just threaded the needle perfectly, and
it's not. It's so not common. I mean, this is one of the first times it's happened to me, and I've done a couple holiday movies. I did some ghostwriting, and I'll say that the movies that I had produced have all come out the way that I was happy about. But some of the ghostwriting stuff, I mean, you wouldn't believe what they did and tore apart after paying me and just, destroying things. And so it's usually not the case, which is why I'm so stoked on Teardrop, is that like everything went, like I watched the movie for the first time and I was just like, this is what I wrote.
That's your movie. That's
my
movie.
I know. And it's like how I imagined it and better because the cast brought to life and the kids did such a better job than I imagined in my head, because in my head there's sometimes like some bad acting, like I imagine actors saying my lines when I'm imagining it before it's made, like sometimes in a corny way. And so when someone brings like it as like a human take and they're like, oh my god, this kid really is drunk and like sad, and it's like, this is fucking awesome and way better. So, but again, I feel as though I'm like in cloud nine because the process went so well. And I know firsthand that most experiences do not end this way. And I have sympathy because I've met a couple of writers who had their things just butchered and they weren't even watching their movie and they were like drunk at the premiere and they left to go to a bar. And it's just like,
really?
happens a lot. On big movies too, where you're like, wow.
I've heard that, and certain studios now, yeah, they just it's the production company's movie, and yeah, that's
so tough because it's your baby, and you also have to surrender it. Like when I gave it up, when I gave it over, and like I finished the final draft, it was like I knew the director had a good vision. I knew that the production company liked the story. I knew that the producers, all their notes were about the story and making better. But then it's like you put your blindfold on and you hope that what they're doing is actually what you want versus like, oh my God, is it going to turn out,
yeah.
And I have hard taste. Like my standards are high and I want it. Like there's a part of me that wants to hate something that, because I have like a tight thing. Like it's supposed to be this good. It's supposed to be this. It's supposed to be.
I know that feeling. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so when I watched it and it was good, I was just like overcome with relief because I was just like, yes, like they, because I knew how easy it could be for something to go wrong just from like not even anyone's fault, but like some actor they cast is like in a bad mood and like not acting well, and like the whole production is like, ruined that way. It happens all the time because actors are people, directors are people.
A lot of moving pieces.
So many moving pieces, like good production value, makeup, all of it.
Patrick, he said he's here. He said, my friend Sean edited Teardrop.
Dude. Well, there you go, man. I mean, like, I don't want to do any spoiling, but like the some of the editing towards the end sequence stuff.
Yeah.
Out of control.
Yeah. It bottlenecks, man. It bottlenecks.
Ron, if you're ever listening to this, man, you're a rock star, dude. I didn't meet Sean, but the guy just destroyed.
He says John wants to know if you personally went to scout locations.
I did not. I didn't go to set, unfortunately, just with the pandemic precautions and everything.
So, all right. So, where was it filmed? Where was this filmed?
Filmed in like the Santa Clarita. There's like this not ghost town, an old west. There's a ghost town.
Filmed on location, man. Yeah.
It was method. Yeah. There's an old west town up in Santa Clarita. I think it's called like Vala's. I don't know, something with a V, something V Ranch. And I did not go, but I love what they did with it. And so I'm just, I just surfed and waited for the movie to come out. So I didn't do anything with production.
Okay. So, I mean, as this was happening through production, were you stressing? I mean, or did you get a good vibe from the get-go? Were they talking to you?
Yeah, I got a very good vibe just from, I mean, when you talk to a director and their vision is like what you want, where they're like, we want to make it more this and atmospheric and eerie, and we want to lose any team tropes and stuff like that. I was just like, yes. But beyond that, I try and I tell people, I try to not think about it while it's happening because I'm like, you'll drive yourself mad,
Yeah, you will. And for no good reason.
For no good reason. I'm like, I've done my job. Everyone's happy with what I've done. I've given it to people I trust. Now I have to trust them and let go and move on and watch when the movie comes out and work on some other projects. And, I think that's the most important thing. It's just like when you've done your job as an artist, whether you're a musician or a writer or editor or actor, director, painter, once you've given everything you've got and you feel that sense of pride, you got to move on. You got to know that you put it all out there, and you got to just say, hey, what happens next is outside of my control. Otherwise, you're going to be worried and frantic, and your quality of life is going to go down. And man, what's being a writer if you can't enjoy your life? I have to go to work. If I'm sitting at home and I'm not having fun.
Hey man, historically, the writers, get a rep as a miserable lot.
But that's why. That's why. I know why. I know why it is because they're mercy to giving up their baby over and over again, but they have to understand that they're really giving it up. It's like when you give it over to someone and they buy it and you sign, you have to let it go. Like that's the deal you're making, And if you want saying it, like get into producing, getting into directing. That's just, because I'm really out there, by the way, to like change the perception on writers and that, that cliche of being unhappy and drinking and writing and cigarettes and like I take stretch breaks. I'm drinking water. I'm surfing. I've got like veggies in my fridge. Why? I'm trying to be at this long time. I'm trying to be healthy and happy and feel good. And so I'm always telling writers, like, you don't need to be suffering and angry and upset. You just have to know that what you can control is how good your script can be and your story. And outside of that, when it sells, if this person reading it likes it, whatever, it's out of your hands. Throw darts, let it go.
That's a message that should go to not just writers, but people in general. Not holding on to things, man. Just let it go. Because you're not accomplishing anything. While you're doing that, just let it go.
And it rarely affects the outcome too, by the way.
Yeah, and it usually just makes you miserable.
It makes
even if it pans out, you've become miserable by the time you get to wherever you're going to get. And
that's the thing. If you do the calculation and you pull away, you're like, well, worrying and complaining get me anything when it comes to this? No. So I might as well, it's either going to sell in 5 years or it won't, but I can choose to enjoy my day and find things to be happy and grateful about instead of finding all the reasons why my great story won't get discovered. It's that kind of thing where I feel like we said, the mental game. It's a mental game, being a writer and a creator and a podcaster.
It should be mentioned that you had Stephen Monroe as your director.
Yes.
He has some horror cred, man. Two I Spit on Your Grave films, House of Nine, The Exorcism of Molly Hartley. I mean, so you had a director that was familiar with horror. I've seen that sometimes too, where I'll review a movie and I'm like, and then I'll look at the IMDb cred. I'm like, this guy has no experience in horror. Like, who decided to hand this person, and it pretty much turns out the way that you think it would if you just like, okay, I could have saw that coming, You
want someone who understands the genre, because it has traditional things and his first, or his big film, I Spit on Your Grave. I mean, that movie is brutal.
Yeah, man.
Brutal. But the filmmaking, the acting, the intensity, it's like, and by the way, I know some people who like that really hard R stuff where they
graphic stuff.
They're just enjoying it. And so it's funny because like a couple people I know when I told them that he was signed on, they're like, oh my God. And I was like, I'm really excited too, because take his instincts and put it with this story I wrote that's got a little bit more of this like little higher concept, sort of like mystery kind of thing mixed in where the guy who I know can make shit real and gritty and like have that flair and those hard edits and those shots where you're behind the character and it's psychological mixed in with this kind of like supernatural kind of old West horror movie. I'm like, this is going to certainly be original. And so the combo, man, it's the combo package of a script and a director. It's like the first place
you got a director that was not afraid to take risks.
I'm again, that's the luck of the draw too. He's just the guy who producers went to.
Yeah. Hold on. We'll get to that in a minute. I'll give the film a review on my channel after I watch it. Maybe help get the word out. And Patrick says, I'm interviewing Sean Kane on June 8th. Did you like his edited version of your story?
Dude,
Sean
I loved it. So much so. I mean, I think what he did, which is a great editor, is that he made the story. You don't even think about the editing. You just watch the movie. Even though there's actually quite a bit of stylish editing, it's just like the movie just plays where you're watching story and you're not watching like filmmaking, one take, edit thing. You're just like following Chris. I'm following these students. I'm following his teacher, his romance with her, and I'm like, do I like the story or do I not like the story? And that's what I always wanted to come down to, which is like, if you don't like Teardrop, you don't like my movie, that's fine. But it's usually because you wanted something else, and that's all right. Versus, I don't like some of these type filmmakers who make everything about filmmaking. It's like one take, then it's this, then it's that. And instead of just being like, let's follow the story. And editor was great. Obviously.
What I appreciated was, actually seeing the teen trope. You don't see that very often.
Yeah.
And there were some risky moments in there, with like the Josie character, and you're like, well, I haven't seen something like that in, 80s, early 90s kind of thing, Did
you ever see the movie, what's it called? Body Double?
Yeah, but I don't remember it. It's been a while.
It's the guy who directed Scarface. I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, De Palma.
De Palma. Yeah, and that was what I love is we took some risks with the kids of like treating them like real teenagers, and some teenagers are a little horny, that's and it's like let's have some fun, let's have some real fights, let's have them exchange words with each other that are a little edgy, and that's what it does. When people are drinking wine in an old West town and someone says something real awful, like somebody's going to respond with something even more awful. And I want to stay true to the type of language that people use. And there's a little nudity in there too, and just kind of again, not for the sake of nudity, but for the sake of when you watch the film, there's a big reason why there's nudity in there for the plot and the characters.
Yeah.
So which is not gratuitous nudity, which
no,
again,
but and that was, I grew up, watching horror movies in the 80s.
Yeah.
You had Raimi. We just talked about this last week. He was kind of the king of the DIY, sort of, smaller budget kinds of films. But we talked about how that gave inspiration to a lot of other people who said, okay, look at this guy. He did it. I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were just a slew of movies that came out in the 80s and early 90s, that sort of took those kind of risks, and some were better than others, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that is something I haven't seen in a modern film, where everybody's constantly playing safe, or, has a formula, or, a set of rules, that, they can't go outside of. We were talking about that a little bit in the cookie cutter. And so I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is really cool. Okay. I can't believe I just saw that.
Yeah.
And I'm telling people in the audience now, not for the sake of spoilers, because I won't give any spoilers.
Yeah.
What he's saying is absolutely correct. It's not gratuitous, but I respected it. I was like, holy shit, this is okay. That's fucking cool. And
it's so funny you're pointing out, and this is what I was so hoping for, because it's something that I think has been robbed from a lot of movies out of, wanting to be safe and not wanting to, piss anyone off with just things that are a little bit edgier. And I understand the idea behind that, but in practice, you would never have a movie, even like in the comedy space, like Superbad, American Pie, a lot of these things where you have basically characters where it's like, let's allow us to, in characters, as long as the morality of the story is correct, let's allow things to be a little wild and a little crazy and go to those places. And let's make sure that the writer, I know when someone's saying something awful to someone, when they're wrong and when they're right, versus every character is just, do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's the writer's job to understand the morality of when you're using stuff, when you're using nudity, when you're using really bad language, or,
your rationale. Your rationale for doing it.
Saying something really bad to a girl, or a girl saying something about someone's mental health, right? And so, but those things are part of the story, and I want to hear them, I want to do them, and so I want to do them, and I want to do them honestly and raw and things, and I want real reactions. But I know who gets their comeuppance, and who, if they cross the line, get what they deserve, and if they didn't, they can be redeemed. Yeah. And I think that's okay. We need that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were talking about this a little bit. I used to be a teacher overseas, and so I've taken kids on those long extended trips, overnighters and week longs and five. It's like swinging a bag of cats, man.
Yeah,
it really is. It's like putting 4 cats in a bag and just like this, because they're just they're 15 or 18 or whatever, and you know, kids do say awful things to each other because, you know, they have that, you know, part of the brain that really hasn't been developed yet. You know, they don't have, you know, as much. They're starting to develop a little bit of empathy, which you kind of see in the story. But at the same time, they can flip on a dime and just, you know, put their finger like right in your eye, you know, right in your eye socket, you know, and without even flinching.
And you mix a little alcohol and a little weed into the mix, and like a place that's tense, and it's like you can really mind those moments and get and escalate to them. And you know, that was the other thing I was really happy. You know, when I did when there's a weed scene, I won't say about it, but like I put in like very detailed stuff about the edibles and things because like I want some authenticity to it. Like, look, I've done that stuff. It's like, and I hate when movies have someone who has no idea what they're talking about. You know?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I had a couple of my friends who watched the film and they're like, dude, like that's exactly how we did. It's like, yes, like they stayed true to all the little details about those things. So that it's not this generic thing of like some person who's like here's a pot brownie, you know? It's like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, and same with the drinking and same with the way kids talk and stuff. And just, you know, I like the idea of having the authenticity and yet also having the heightened characters where characters are still cinema characters. They're not like real dramatic people. They have the layers of people, but they have something else. You know, they have some sort of tortured element, and all of those tortured elements will be, you know, come into play with the haunting and you know, the main guy.
And it mixes modernity in a setting that isn't really set up for it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, you've got 2022 dialogue, 2022 teenagers, you know, 5G and, you know, edibles and, you know, we're going to get old school drunk tonight, you know, like it's, you know, something from like, you know, some antique shop or something like that. Yes. But within the confines of this, I mean, there's a sort of claustrophobia that goes with it too, because the town only goes on for,
it's still a smaller,
it's a couple of buildings, you know, and you know, it's good stuff.
That's an interesting thing, you know. I didn't even really think about it. You know, I just kind of sometimes write instinctively, but like the clashing of such modern people in an old West town doing things that modern people do in an old West area, and like how that equals some fun scenes and some great scares out of that was just, you know, kind of the obvious move of like, oh wow, like what would these guys do here? What would these young kids on a field trip do after their teachers, you know, are off doing their thing, you know?
Yeah. Because once they're on their own, that's, you know,
that's
kind of when you have to worry when you can't see them, you know, you're like, what the hell are you guys doing in there?
Exactly.
You know, that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's a really solid film, and it's good stuff. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it, man. It's again been a wild week of release, and again, I say to everyone too, just like keep following your dreams. You know, keep writing your stories, keep having fun with it, and you know, the good stuff happens. It just patience and timing, and just keeping the smile and a good attitude through the way. It's just. I always try to hammer that on people. So I'm like, oh, even me. It's like, hey, I'm gonna want to make my next movie. It's like there'll probably be new roadblocks, new obstacles, new things. It's like, oh, hey, I want to do this thing. I want this budget. Oh, we love that, but you know. And so it's just a constant state of, okay, you make your movie, it airs, you get good reactions, you get some bad reactions, and then you're like, what's next for me as a writer? And I just, it's a pretty awesome lifestyle, man. It's a fun time.
Sounds like it, man. Sounds like it. Hold on, we got a question for you. John, do you think the quote unquote attention to detail you put into your writing affected or inspired the production team to get your vision on screen?
Let's see if I can decode what you're asking. What you're asking is, do you think my descriptions in the way I described the tone and the story actually translated the production to pulling off the vision better versus them just looking at it as like a hard blueprint of like exterior teardrop, the moon shines down. Interior hotel. Two people come down. Denver gives them a drink. Okay. Yes. Well, what I'll say is, I think that it got the director and the producers to sign on. So it gave them the vision and an imagination stimulation in the first read. Whether or not that translated to
John's saying yes, that you're answering his question. Yeah, that's his question.
Have a voice. Always have a voice in your script, because that's the thing. It's like, I wanted to make sure when we got that first read from Steven that it was like he saw the movie versus it being very sterile and very like theater blocking. This person comes down to the bar and Ross comes in. It's like, screw that. Like, put me in the feeling. Be a writer. Be a storyteller, and then use the screenplay format.
So even within the screenplay format, you're going for the feeling.
Always. Okay.
And
every script of mine has a different feeling. And by the way, that's why it's so hard. After your first script is the second one has to be different, and the third has to be different. You can't repeat the same voice and style because it has to match whatever the story's about.
So let me back up for a second. Hit you with a couple of more questions. I'm not taking up too much of your time, am I?
No, man, chilling.
Okay. How does it work? So just so for us lay people out here who aren't doing this, how does it work? You write your story and then, you just you put it out through representation, or you have your own people, or you just how does it go from fade to black, from fade to black to?
Yeah, for sure. I actually don't even have an agent or manager at this point. I was actually able to sell 2 movies in the last year without him. I had one a little while prior to the pandemic who wasn't doing much for me, so I parted ways. But just a producer I met from years back who had done my first movie, which was a holiday movie in 2015. And I was a little young buck, 23-year-old running around Canada, and it's this crazy little Christmas true story thing. And 7 years later, and we never worked again. He just ended up working for Tubi, and he just connected with the script and fought for it, and it just happened. So, I think it's kind of about, there's a big drive for writers and people, agent, manager, but I just feel that it's most important to write good stories first, and then getting people to like your material spreads that word of mouth feeling, and then someone random will often fight for your script. A lot of times more than an agent or manager. So yeah, it's just kind of a producer who, I knew from way back, who we had kind of fallen out of touch with, and just, 7 years later, he just, went crazy on this one, and he fought for it and made it happen.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no magic formula to it. If I could have sold it 5 years ago, I would have, but I don't think Tubi was around then, so that's kind of cool too.
I can't tell you. I almost guarantee that everybody that's in the comments here uses Tubi, and it's not just because it's a free streaming app; it's the quality of the content that they put on there.
Yeah,
Tubi's a fantastic. It beats the. What's this?
They've got a good library of older movies and stuff too.
I was stunned the first time. I think Eric was the person who, you got to get on Tubi. And I'm like, okay, man, it beats the hell out of Netflix.
Dude,
Netflix is
people are unsubscribing to Netflix like wildfire right now. And
yes, same with Disney, I heard, yeah.
And they better be careful with a company like Tubi, because Tubi is like, hey, look, we're free. We have some ads, but we're free, and anyone can watch it and have fun, and we have a big library. And it's like, well, you find an audience member who finds stuff they like on Tubi, it's like they're going to kiss goodbye any place they have to pay $10, $11, $12 for a month, especially when they're not delivering.
Yeah, there's nothing to watch on Netflix, man.
I've got to pay for it. I don't use it.
Same. It just sits there. It just kind of sits there. And the original series are all gone. I really liked what they were doing with their Marvel series. Those were
Archive 81.
Did I see what?
Archive 81 on Netflix.
No, is it worth it?
That I actually really liked, and I watched that in Squid Games. I really liked, but Archive 81 I really enjoyed almost all of it. But there's something really special about that show. And it's kind of a horror show too.
Okay, I'm hearing things about that German series Dark.
Oh yeah, I heard about that too.
Yeah,
But,
I heard about that.
They've got some stuff. It's just the overall amount, and for what you're paying, it's like,
Yeah,
it's
it's weak. It's weak.
Got to set up the standards. That's my thing too. And I sometimes point the finger at writers because I saw myself on the experience like, hey, I stepped up the script from pre to like production a lot, and it required me to dig deeper and say, hey, just because we like this and the producer like it doesn't mean, and I came up with a better thing and a better ending and a better this, and that took me getting off my ego and saying, hey, look, they bought my script the way it is, it's perfect, instead of being like, hey, they didn't even ask for a note for this, but I see a chance to improve this. And I remember specifically having like a big moment where I didn't, this is my first horror movie and I didn't want to blow it too. It's like, I want to make sure that not only do I deliver, but I like keep everyone excited about the project and don't do something that they dislike. That's a tricky thing, right? So I remember having this big moment where I'm like, I've done all the production notes, all these great notes that everyone wanted, and I've made the script way better, but I was still like, my gosh, I've come up with such a better idea based on something. And I'm like, am I really going to turn in a new draft with them with a giant new ending, a new crescendo, a new like hook on all these new pieces, this new like reoccurring theme that changed everything? And I remember talking to my brother, and I'm like, he's like, that's so good. I'm like, all right, well, what would I do if I wasn't worried about losing my career and losing the job, right? I said, fucking do it in a heartbeat because this makes the movie so much better. And he's like, then you got to do it. And so I was like, fuck it. I turned in a crazy new ending, a new build-up, this new character, just new plot line. And I remember not hearing them for like a week. And I'm like, oh, fucking blew it. I blew it. I heard from them for like 2 weeks or something. And then they're like, I eventually emailed them. I'm like, so what do you guys think? I'm like, no one's responding. They're like, oh, we started. Everyone loves the new draft so much. We got
shit. Oh man, they didn't even tell you.
They were so stoked on it. They got all the cast. They forgot to tell me, and I was like, but it was a big moment for me where I was like, here's my chance to step the story up way more instead of just like settling on like the script that's sold.
What I'm hearing, I mean, you're talking about living a more joyful life. In terms of writing and just in terms of living. But what I'm hearing is one on top of that, or maybe, underneath those two things, is a work ethic and a willingness to take risks.
Risks. So crucial and hard. That's why I call them risks.
Yeah.
They're called risks because you're putting something on the line.
Yeah. There's a real chance of loss.
A real chance
with any chance. With a risk. I mean, it could just as easily go the other way.
I mean, I had a thought cross my mind that they're going to hate. They're going to say, "Why did you change all this great stuff?" And just like the project will lose momentum and just fall apart. And I was like, "Oh God, what a thought! What a thought!" And I'm like, "This is so good. This is so good."
But you're following your instinct.
Yeah, my instincts are telling me this, and then my fear and my doubt, and like wanting to have a career and wanting to, not like, you work so hard to get this moment. But I'm like, I also got to this moment so that I could make good movies, that I could start my writing career making good movies versus just phoned in movies. Shit, there's even a dialogue about the character, like struggling with like, as a writer, like what to do, and like, I'm like, what a hypocrite I am if I like, all I say is like, man, that writer should have taken the risk right here. And then here's my chance and I'm not going to take my risk. And so when I did it, and then the movie turned out the way I wanted, I was like, wow, like that's what it's all about, where I'm just so stoked on the film because I felt as though I took those risks and that the way they turned out on film was like, I think what gave the movie the magic kind of plot and the thing that was missing from the draft that sold.
I think I remember a quote from Alan Moore, V for Vendetta and Watchmen and things like that. And he talks about the difference between making something between good writing and commercial writing.
Yep.
He said, I can show you, or I can tell you what I think is going to make for good writing. I don't even know what commercially successful writing is. So I can't take you down that path. I'm not guaranteeing that
Yep.
what you're going to write is going to be commercially successful, I can guarantee you that I can give you some guidelines to make it good. But I think that that's the priority.
That's the priority.
Yeah, it seems it's almost counter. You could make an argument that that's counterintuitive, but it wouldn't be a very good one. I wouldn't. It's not an argument that I would want to.
Yeah, and it doesn't even and they may not even be like mutually exclusive. Like you could write the greatest story possible, and then it also could get commercial success. And you could also write a steaming pile of shit and it could get commercial success. So whatever that variable of commercial success is, I think that it's a dangerous thing to chase.
Yeah.
At least as the storyteller. Maybe let the studio, the marketers, and those people chase it. But like, don't as the creation itself, like make sure that the story is as pure as possible for an audience member to be like, hey, like this film isn't trying to preach, it's not trying to do this, it's not trying to like things, it's kind of letting me watch the story, and if I don't like this character, fine, but I'm interested by him, or whatever, those kind of things. The way I like to watch my films, which is like there's another type of movie where it's just like it's trying to be all these things, it's trying to do all this stuff, and then like what it really needed was just like, simple story, like big idea, but bring me in. Like, don't just start with flying cars over the freeway. That's not a hook. That's just a roller coaster. A hook should have some intrigue.
That's spectacle.
Yeah, spectacle versus a hook are just, to me, that like night and day. But it's rare to see a movie that opens on something that's not spectacle, and and also succeed, because there's also a hell of a lot of movies that now open with someone looking at themselves in the mirror, and it's like, I've seen that 100 times. Or
a dystopia, or
My favorite, it's like it opens in a mirror, and then it's like a person looking at themselves in the mirror thing, and then it's like 6 months earlier. It's like, gosh, how many times have I seen that transition?
I think it was John who said something like, if there's a millimeter of flesh, it doesn't really matter because they'll flip it over and work the other side.
Exactly.
What the fuck? Hold on a second. We got some comments here. Eric is saying he's now following you on Twitter.
Dude, I'll follow you back when I see my phone here.
And he's retweeted this interview. John Steele wants to know, I know this is kind of a vanilla question, but your favorite horror film?
Now, would you categorize like The Others as a horror movie?
I would. I've covered it here on the film. Yeah. I mean, it's not a gory movie, but it's a fantastic fucking film.
I like that genre a lot. I actually try to steer more into that genre with Teardrop. Whatever that is, it's almost like gothic horror.
Gothic horror, yeah.
Gothic horror is my shit. I also obviously love The Shining. I really like this movie called it was I'll say this is one of the scariest movies I've seen, was that The Babadook. That thing scared me. Because scared me the shit out of me.
That kid was scary.
The kid, the creature, I found that I really like horror movies where there's a mythology to whatever the monster or the creature or the ghost or whatever it is. And I hate when a movie basically has a ghost or a being or an alien, and there's no effectively what they would call, we don't want to have exposition, but I like knowing about the creatures, like where he came from, why he decided to haunt, what his thing is. And, a perfect example of a movie a lot of people love was that sci-fi horror movie directed by John Krasinski. What was it called?
Quiet Place?
Quiet Place, right? I enjoyed the movie. But had I been writing it, would have had this whole basically monologue and like sting with it, and like basically almost flashback of wanting to know what their like where they came from, what their master plan was. Like, I like that mythology part where it's not just like they're scary and now they're here. Like, I kind of enjoy the backstory, even if it's overly expository. There's something about the myth and the monomyth of the creatures when someone does it that like has always been something that fascinated me. And so I guess the Babadook did that, and there's a lot of movies I like.
Yeah, that movie kind of dropped you in the middle of it.
Yeah, it dropped you in the middle.
Started in the middle.
And I have friends who are like, I love that about it, and I hate the thing. And I'm just, again, I enjoyed the movie. I watched the sequel too, but like, I just love when there's that scene that's like, shit. Even they did it in like Pacific Rim, where it's just like it explained.
Oh yeah.
I don't care if it's expositional. I like that shit. I like knowing where these like fictional creatures, their origin story is in like a condensed timeline. You know,
I love
like
Pacific Rim. That's
I love it.
That's
Dude,
a
I
nod
love
to those old 70s kaiju, Godzilla, Ultraman, Space Giants kind of shit. Yeah.
The opening of
good stuff.
Pacific Rim is like one of my favorite openings of a movie, where they're like how it happened, and like where's the bridge and the voiceover and the San Francisco bridge, and like I just love that. Like again, the mythology of them before we meet them, and I enjoy. I'm heavy on movies that really create a world, a big world. So I guess to answer your question, yeah. I also really like Prometheus. A lot of people don't like that one, but I call that a sci-fi horror movie.
I liked it. What he was trying to do was so ambitious.
Yes.
And it fell apart a little bit, but I enjoy it. I own it on Blu-ray. Visually, it's beautiful to watch.
That could be the best alien sci-fi, like alien CGI I've ever done of like an alien creature. I think, like the aliens themselves look so good, and except for there was that one movie. Do you ever see that with was it called Fire in the Sky? Did you see that?
I never saw it. I know what you're talking about. I never saw it.
You got to see it. It's about these guys who were like basically based on a true story. That was like they're hunting for this UFO, or this UFO thing like abducts one of them, and it has this insane final act with the aliens, and it's like,
okay, I'll take a look.
It's not this like Fly style horror. You know what I mean? Like it's not that older, more like creature practical effect shit. But there's something really good about that movie. Like even though there's problems with the some of the buildup, the like final act. Fire in the Sky is it's a pretty wild alien horror movie. Those are pretty.
It's probably on Tubi.
Yeah, you know what? It might be on Tubi.
It's probably on Tubi. Hold on, we got the Agoraphobe saying exactly. The more inspiring the work, the more you're going to get everyone on your side to help you get your vision realized.
Agoraphobe.
John says Tubi has classics in there for us horror lovers. Yeah, they do. That's a fantastic. That's a fantastic horror section. Oh, hell yeah. Lots of horror of all flavors on Tubi. If the streaming service is free, we can handle maybe 5 minutes of ads during a 90-minute movie. Tubi is great.
Yep.
It is always a great feeling to watch a filmmaker with something new or powerful to say. A treat for film lovers. I'm constantly looking for a film to inspire me and really make me think. I love those just as much as I love a film made for fun. And yes, the film is called Teardrop Gore. And he's saying the others is horror. Babadook is awesome.
Yeah, Babadook. I'm surprised not as many people saw that. Oh, I also love Sinister. Do you see Sinister? Scott Derrickson. It was like this Ethan Hawke was this guy, and he goes.
Oh yeah, I always mix that up with Insidious.
Yes, he goes
James Wan
was inhabited by someone who like murdered someone, and he finds these tapes in his attic or something.
Something like it's been a long time. Do you like that too, though?
I've seen that one a few times.
Sometimes having an explanation and a backstory is greater than something just being scary, like Zombies Halloween.
Yep.
Does he have films?
Does he
like films like The Killing of a Sacred Deer or The House That Jack Built?
Oh, The House That Jack Built, I started watching. I was on a vacation with my folks and my
and you watched The House That Jack Built?
My parents they love movies things, but they don't like things that are like overly cerebral and like, you know what I mean? Like metaphysical and that. Yeah. Not only was the last house Jack built, like that was because, it was very like inside the like psychology of the killer. And it was like this meandering thing, which I was kind of getting a kick out of it until they had him kill that duck or whatever. And then my mom was like a big animal lover. Was like, I hate this movie. I'm out of here.
We're done.
Never finished. I actually read the rest of it on Wikipedia just because I had to know what happened. But it was trippy. I mean I can handle that style. Although like Enter the Void, I really like. That's not a horror movie, but sometimes that overly NC-17 type genre is like very intense.
Yeah, yeah. I usually avoid that type of torment kind of thing going on. Like,
I prefer that the torment is implied when it's that brutal.
yeah, yeah.
Like even in Teardrop, there's some horrible stuff out, but it's like let that stuff be implied because I want to make sure that it's a heightened tale that's still fun, you know.
Yeah.
I think that goes down again, but there's a huge audience for Lars von Trier movies and those.
Yeah. It's not my thing, but it's out there. It's out there.
People are like vomiting and stuff, you know. I'm like, I don't want to go to a movie where there's someone vomiting in the audience, you know. That's just.
Well, now they've got Cronenberg's about to release his new movie, and that is supposed to be super gruesome.
What is that one?
The one he's got a new one coming out with Viggo Mortensen and Kristen Stewart.
Oh.
And it's supposed to, Cronenberg's going back to body horror, and they said like the first 10 minutes, I think it has something to do with surgery or something like that. Yeah, it's like a surgery fetish or something like that with Viggo Mortensen and Kristen Stewart, and I'm like, what? You know, but
it's like when they get those big actors and then they're like doing something that's just really brutal.
Yeah, he goes from Aragorn to surgery fetish, and you're just like, okay, but it's Viggo, so I'll go see it, and it's Cronenberg. Yeah, it's Cronenberg, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Who the hell am I to tell him?
Maybe it's stylistic and tasteful.
I'm sure it probably will be. It'll still be gruesome. I'm not doing that human centipede thing.
Oh yeah. I was tweeting about that because I was like, there's just horror movie lovers of like the genre of horror is so, you can go from someone who's like, my favorite horror movie is The Sixth Sense, and then someone's like, mine's Human Centipede, and then someone's like, mine's Sharktopus.
Yeah.
Like, wow, what a genre, or Zombievers,
I get into that sometimes.
Ooh, boy, I have friends who will like get up, who can't wait to watch that stuff, and I'm like, dude, I cannot watch that. It's brutal, and it's well done. That's what's crazy about it. They're well done. Like, why they're so brutal is that they're kind of realistic. Like, it doesn't seem corny, and that's I'm like, Jesus.
I'm gonna have to take your word. I'm gonna have to take your word for it on that. So what's next? What does the future hold? What do you? Can you talk about anything that you're working on right now, or are you just enjoying yourself for a couple of days?
Yeah, I'm enjoying myself. I also just had a holiday movie on Peacock in December that I wrote.
Okay.
So it was called the Housewives of the North Pole. So on the other end of the spectrum, a Real Housewives movie mixed in with a Christmas thing. Then a horror movie. So I feel as though I'm like, nobody can put me in a box now, I've got a comedy that I think is getting traction again that has Tobin Bell attached.
Okay.
It's called Mouth to Mouth. It's been optioned several times, but we just haven't been able to get it off the ground. But I think now we're getting some steam. And then, of course, I've got another horror movie that I'm hoping to follow up Teardrop with. That's already written and it's out right now, getting read. And then I've got these, one day I'm pushing, I've got these kind of high concept sci-fi horror scripts that I've written that are like in the, again, studio scale budget. So, I'm going to need to supercharge my game and get a little bit more cachet to get those things lifted. But that's kind of on my goal, is to kind of write a movie like Interstellar or Prometheus one day and, have a guy like Ridley Scott or Tom Cruise or one of these people, or Nolan or Darren Aronofsky and just
Del Toro.
But do just like with Teardrop, these movies don't have the studio lines. They're authentic. They're on, It's the same exact thing, which I feel like is my voice, which is like high concept scenarios and scenes and characters where they're like movie characters, but they're talking and saying the things that people don't say, in movies right now. And just, they have like no one-liners, no like, going onto a spaceship and being like telling a joke about Instagram, like no TikTok, none of that references while we're doing something serious and gritty. And like that. So that's kind of my thing where I'm like, I'm really, excited to kind of eventually get my toes in the studio movies, but try to really make them the way that I want to see them, which is none of that fucking corny bullshit.
And they're making those movies, man. You know, I just saw an A24.
Yeah,
I just
A24
saw,
does a great job. They're
cool,
like,
man. I just saw After Yang,
I haven't seen that.
Kogonada's movie.
No, I have to see that.
It's so beautiful.
Is there a movie called Men coming out?
Huh?
Is there a movie called Men coming out? Alex Garland?
Yeah. It's this weekend.
Oh,
this
wow.
weekend. He's anything with Alex Garland. Yeah.
I love Ex Machina.
Ex Machina, 28 Days Later.
Oh, yeah.
I like The Beach.
I love The Beach, man. Some people don't like it. I find that movie's got this funky tone that I really just enjoy.
Yeah, I'll anything that Alex Garland does, man. Anything that A24 is doing, you know, I mean, that's, you know, I'll lean into it 70% just off that reference alone.
Yeah,
you know,
because 1,000,000%, and that's, you know, again, as a writer too, like predominantly a writer, like that's my goal is to like get you know, it's like when I dip my toes into sci-fi, it's like I gotta hope to try to get it into, you know, an Alex Garland, a person who understands sci-fi and horror and mystery versus, you know, again, you have to try to tap that right director or your script gets lost in the machine and it becomes something that it's not. So that's kind of the you know, whether it's a crapshoot or maybe it's just a persistence game and you know, have a vision and want to do this and write the right stories game. You know,
maybe it's all those things.
It's everything, man. It's everything. And it's nothing. It's just it's like life. You know, like we said, you got to have that loose grip and enjoy it and go to you know, Indonesia on a whim and you know, that's the way to do it.
That's it. You know, it's like quantum mechanics. Everything's happening all at once, all the time.
Yeah, exactly. This is great, my man.
Man, I can't tell you. Thank you so much for. I think. Is there anything you wanted to? Did we miss anything? I think maybe this is a good enough place to kind of bring it to a close. We're on a good note here.
This is beautiful, man. Thanks for having me on. This was a great time.
I appreciate it. Happy to have you on, man. You know, open invitation anytime.
Yeah,
you know, man, you want to come back. You got something else you want to talk about, or you know, just shoot the shit.
Maybe I'll have to write a Human Centipede sequel. You know.
Well, if you do, send me a message. I'll get a kick out of it. Yeah, okay. Maybe then I'll go. I'll have a reason to go because all my I couldn't I can't even do Antichrist or anything like that.
No, I can't. I can't either. I'm kind of a pussy when it comes to like that style that extra extreme. I'd say as far as I could go was like Hostel. And
I didn't even do that.
I handled Hostel. It was pretty brutal. I really enjoyed it. And then I also watched this movie called Red State that was kind of scary.
Oh, okay.
You ever see Red State?
It sounds familiar, but I know I haven't watched it.
Oh, the guy who directed Clerks did it, which was
Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith. It's like it was a shock. He made this like really serious, gritty, like thriller horror movie. It was really good.
Okay, it's Kevin Smith.
Good acting, and I mean, you know, it's one of those movies. And the guy who plays this priest guy is such a good actor. I think he passed away, unfortunately, but this guy was like just next level. We're like, man, this guy when he's on fire, like, you know, you could watch 2 hours of just this guy.
Okay.
You know,
well, anything Kevin Smith is a fellow Jersey guy, so
he's a fellow Jersey guy, man.
Clerks was filmed about an hour from here, so
no shit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, things are real. Yeah. No bullshit. Hold on. Gorphobe saying, great interview.
Thanks, Gorphobe.
Great to meet you, Spyder. Be well, John says. And Red State is oh shit scary.
Yeah, he knows what Red State is. There you go.
Well, man, thank you once again. I appreciate it. I appreciate you for stopping in here and spending a little time. Yeah. This show will be back tomorrow. We will be here with another first-time join-up. We're going to be teaming up with Gutting the Sacred Cow podcast, and we're going to have part 2 of our conversation. I started with Cinema Cities podcast about the effects, as we were talking here, of movie franchises on Hollywood and filmmaking. Because, you know, I can see maybe you saw that screenshot that went viral of the 70 screenings that day of Doctor Strange. No disrespect to Sam Raimi. But, you know, if I want to see something like, you know, an A24 film, I have to go like 50 miles. Yeah, I can't, because my multiplex is just,
That's no good.
Yeah, it's just clogged with the blockbuster. So
it's not fair to the the films that need to be seen too.
I think the wave is starting to break. This channel, other channels are really starting to talk about this. I'm sure, you probably talk to a lot of people who are like, what the fuck, is going on nowadays. So I think, like all things, eventually they just kind of, come to their natural conclusion. And, hopefully before too long, we can start to get something other than blockbusters. I don't want to get rid of blockbusters. I don't want to get rid of franchises.
I'm the same way too. I think that when they're less and few and far between, they're actually better because you really are excited about having a blockbuster versus when they're all there.
It's every 6 weeks now.
I don't want to eat steak every night. I don't want to have steak and mashed potatoes and macaroni and cheese every night.
Yeah, same here.
Let's have it once a month, twice a month.
Hopefully before not too long, as the saying goes. All right, Mike, thanks once again to Spyder Dobrofsky. Spyder, stick around for a second after the outro, and we'll talk a little bit. My thanks to everybody in the stream. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, Gutting the Sacred Cow podcast, and have a good night, everybody. Peace.